Some people even traveled thousands of miles to scrub slick off the rocks with toothbrushes. Just before noon on March 23, 1989, an oil tanker called Exxon Valdez docked at the port of Valdez, Alaska, terminus of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Here, crude oil pumped all the way from Prudhoe Bay on the Arctic coast via a dozen pump stations and hundreds of miles of pipeline zigzagged across the wild Alaska landscape north to south and ended here at the Valdez Marine Terminal. For about 9 hours, Exxon Valdez was loaded up with more than 53 million gallons of crude oil. That was right here. Over the next couple of hours, and in part with the help of a tugboat, the tanker made its way out of the port of Valdez, through the Valdez Narrows, and through the Valdez Arm toward the more open sea of the Prince William Sound. Extreme caution was needed here, especially at night, since the nearby Columbia Glacier was prone to calve icebergs into these waters. Well, the crew was overworked and tired, and the captain was retired and possibly, at least partially drunk, if some reports are to be believed. Anyway, he's in his cabin, and the second mate was asleep, leaving a fatigued third mate as the only officer on the bridge. That, by the way, was a violation of company policy. Crucially, the tanker's highfalutin radar system, made by Raytheon, was broken, or at least off. Anyway, just after midnight, so now it's the wee hours of the 24th, Exxon Valdez ran aground on Bligh Reef in Prince William Sound, bumping and scraping along until it rested in the middle of a rock. The rock and coral ripped a hole in the side of the tanker, big enough for 11 million gallons of crude oil to eventually come spilling out into the ocean, representing about a fifth of the total being transported by Exxon Valdez. Now, this wasn't the first time that Bligh Reef, named after William Bligh, who served under Captain James Cook during Cook's third world voyage before being placed in command of the ill-fated HMS Bounty, but that's another story. In 1910, a steamship called the Olympia ran aground here too. The Olympia was owned by the Alaska Syndicate, or Morgenheim, or Guggenmorgen, depending on your pejorative of choice. The Alaska Syndicate, which enjoyed a virtual monopoly on Alaska shipping. Well, luckily, no one died in the Olympia wreck, which, it was decided, had occurred on account of the captain's unskillful navigation. That's how it was put. Anyway, fast forward to 1989, and the Exxon Valdez is hemorrhaging crude into the ocean. Bligh Reef is home to plentiful halibut and shrimp and other sea life, but within a couple of days, the spill has expanded far beyond Bligh Reef. In fact, a storm helped spread the spill hundreds of miles across Prince William Sound, much of its surface covered in sheens of oil, then throughout much of the Gulf of Alaska, then along the coast of the Kenai Peninsula, then the coast of Kodiak Island, then the coast of the Alaska Peninsula, even reaching the coast of the Aleutians. Along the way, it damaged an ecosystem inhabited by sea otters, seals, whales, fish, birds. I remember, as a boy, seeing pictures from Alaska of birds coated thickly by the slick black crude, or of some rocky beach covered in what looked like thick, still wet black paint. No one was quite sure what to do. Booms were deployed. These are big floating barriers meant to contain a spill. Skimmers were deployed. These are machines they help clean up oil from the water's surface. They go around and clean up those sheens of oil on the water's surface. One company tried spraying chemicals over the affected area to get rid of the slick, but the effort largely failed. High pressure hot water was used on some of the affected shoreline, though with mixed results. Some people even traveled thousands of miles to scrub slick off the rocks with toothbrushes. I remember those photos too. Or to try to clean affected birds' feathers. Thousands of Alaskans worked in various capacities to clean up the disaster. Well, environmentalists had warned that such a disaster was coming. For decades, Alaska had been at the forefront of environmentalist activism in the United States. Famed early environmentalist John Muir visited Alaska many times, exploring and observing, and his Sierra Club eventually spearheaded countless environmentalist projects. In the late 50s and early 60s, the federal government was looking for ways to apply nuclear energy in a non-military capacity and decided it might be a cool idea to use nuclear blasts to create a harbor on the coast of northwestern Alaska. It was called Project Chariot. Many Alaskans, including natives who lived in villages that might have been affected by the scheme, came together to say no. Well, the activism worked. The project in Alaska was canceled, and thankfully no nuclear blasts ever reshaped the northwest Alaskan coastline. But a movement had been born to protect Alaska's pristine ecosystems. In 1971, the Alaska legislature established the Department of Environmental Conservation. Well, hundreds of thousands of seabirds died as a result of the Exxon Valdez spill, along with around 3,000 sea otters, hundreds of bald eagles, hundreds of seals, and even a couple of dozen orcas. Who knows how many fish, including halibut and salmon and herring, died too. While much of the oil was cleaned and much more biodegraded through natural processes over the years and decades, of course crude oil is a natural thing, tens of thousands of gallons of oil from the spill can still be found along the coastline of Prince William Sound and beyond. The Exxon Valdez oil spill was the worst in American history, only surpassed 21 years later by the Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010 off the coast of Louisiana.